Hey, everybody, welcome back to your Dawn of Autonomy podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldi, your host and the CEO of P3 Tech Consulting. We're doing something a little bit unique today. We're doing a redo. So, we're revisiting the month of April, which was Education Month, sponsored by USI. And we brought back our special guest, Sean Guerre. He's the managing director at the Energy Drone and Robotics Coalition. The Sean, myself, our producer, Mike, we were all at Exponential at different locations throughout San Diego when we did that first show live, and the stream glitched quite a bit. So this is a retake because what Sean has to say is really important, and I'm so glad that you guys are all dialing in to hear from Sean in a way that isn't buffered every 10 seconds. So Sean, thanks so much for your patience, and thanks for coming back.
Hey, really excited to be back, Don. Thank you so much, and looking forward with everyone to go into I'm going to call it a reboot, but a redo, and really catch up on what's happening with drones and robotics and data, particularly in the energy sector. It should be a great day.
Yeah, it will. And Sean, a lot of folks out there know who you are, but for the few that don't, can you please give a little bit about your background?
Yeah, happy to do so. So I am the director of the Energy Drone and Robotics Coalition and have been for the last 8 years. We are basically focused on best practices, use cases, and tech to help enable our 12,000 plus members globally grow their programs safely and efficiently for robotics and drones and making the data actionable. So it's been exciting to do that. I've always loved tech. That's my background, is in tech and energy. So it's been a great fit for me, and I've enjoyed getting to meet so many people in the industry right here from Houston, Texas, the Petro Metro.
The Petro Metro, I love that. So tell us about EDRC and how this idea for this very specifically focused group started.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Everybody loves a good origin story, and happy to provide one. So when we were looking at a background in construction, we were doing a lot of construction tech around large projects that were happening in 2010 through 2014-ish timeframe in the Gulf Coast, a lot of LNG plants, et cetera. And it was interesting because we were going through a lot of the technology that was being developed. One of the things that happened on a regular basis was the drones being flown over these construction sites, just an early adoption in the engineering and energy development phase. And there would just start to become more and more questions about it. They started using them on some very simple inspections that made a lot of sense, like flare stacks, which in a petrochemical or refining, a lot of those facilities have flares. And basically it's a way to be able to check something at height without having to use ropes and scaffolding. So some of those, and it just kept going from there. And they wanted to know more about the tech. They wanted to know more about safety management systems and training. There was just so many questions because primarily drones at that point were only being adopted by maybe surveying, mapping. It really hadn't entered the inspection side as much. So that really was the beginning. And from those early days, just a few dozen people at the first summit 8 years ago, maybe a dozen exhibitors who are everything from hardware, software, and services. That's where we started and really have built from that point, our entire network of members and social media channels, as well as our live events, our online events, reports, surveys, and really an opportunity to serve the market holistically, 24/7, 365 on what they need to know around drones and energy.
Well, I remember, Sean, when you and I were talking about the dawn of autonomy and getting you back on the show this year, and we were looking at the different month themes, and education clearly spoke to you because your origins, your whole organization's origins are in education. And that is really the heart of what you continue to do. We're going to dive deeper into all those different lines of effort, of course, but before we do, let me ask you this. It was the construction industry at first that was maybe early adopters when you first started EDRC. As you look back, what were some of the challenges they faced or that you saw them facing that you decided to address through education in that first early adoption phase?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because in the early adoption, almost still today, is because you still have so many companies. There's so many energy companies, believe it or not, who haven't really enabled very many robots or drones, for their project. So it's an evolving story. So what was true 8 years ago is true in many ways today. But I will say the focus back then was on the tech, on the hardware. So it was a question of which types of drones could actually fly longer or have a little bit heavier payload carrying, how to get quality data out of it, which companies or service companies are qualified to fly around this critical infrastructure. I mean, these are power lines, substations, refineries, oil and gas fields, pipelines. So you're looking at a lot of critical infrastructure, very expensive, massive issues if anything goes wrong. So what kind of drones and robots could be deployed, around
Right.
those? Who's safe to deploy them? How do we train our people, right? That was a big question because
Right.
these people aren't naturally drone pilots. And so what is the right way to take them through certification and competency? Not just get the license, but how, back then a 333 or a 107 eventually, but how do we actually make sure they're competent to be able to handle these projects? And then I think the last one, which once again, very true today, scaling. So if we have more and more projects, we've proven it, right? We've found the right use cases. We've proven the ROI. We've proven the safety. It's more efficient. Now I think then it becomes a huge question of how do we scale? Is it in-house? Is it hybrid using some outsource? Or is it, hey, we're going to outsource this. We don't want to have to keep up with the latest tech and the latest training. We're going to have service companies help come in and handle that for us.
That what you're saying makes a lot of sense, and I agree that even 8 years later, a lot of those same challenges exist for the people that haven't yet adopted or are looking to start. In fact, Sean, we're in a weird place, right? Because we're in May now, and we had Airspace Link on the show, and they put together a framework actually with 6 levels. And so there are people not, nobody's really at level 6. That's your air taxis, flying autonomously. But definitely, the ones and twosies, the ones like we haven't quite created a program yet. What does that look like? They're still out there, but you're absolutely right. There are people on the sliding scale that have been doing this for years that have general aviation, departments or divisions within their enterprise, and just added, uncrewed systems and very sophisticated in a very sophisticated way. So, man, with all this kind of variety of, let's call them stakeholders, at all different levels of, let's just say, development, how have you been able to kind of coalesce them and build communities in this space?
I think a big piece of it is that they have some commonalities, right? So,
Yeah.
you think about that, we look at where the areas are common between just within one large sector, energy, right? So we're looking at all the different parts of energy as you're discussing. So power and utilities, oil and gas, maritime, et cetera. And so, we have to get into all of those different areas. And, there's a lot of commonalities because they are all critical infrastructure. So we look at some things that really transpire between all of them and make it a lot more sense for them to be able to do that. And these things go globally. I mean, we have 71 different countries, as you can see from, who are part of this. So the
Wow.
same things that, might be different regulatory schemes. So there's some differences by all means, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of commonality. And so that's how
Yeah,
we're
I
able
mean, a
to
nuclear
coalesce.
plant is a nuclear plant, whether it's in Paris, France, or in, 3 Mile Island, Pennsylvania, right? So, yeah, I could see the commonalities there for sure.
So I'd say that's the biggest way we were able to really bring people together was because they shared common problems.
Yeah, and you've got a really eclectic group of stakeholders. I mean, whereas you're so focused, the stakeholders that come to your events, Sean, are also so focused. And so let's pop that slide up. I know we've got, some from the industry. We go industrial energy engineering. This is just the sampling, really, right, of the folks involved in the EDRC and that frequent all of your activities?
Yeah, absolutely. So, within the 12,000 folks who are part of the Energy Drone Robotics Coalition, there's several hundred energy companies, which we tend to call asset owner operators, who come from a wide variety of industries within the energy industrial complex. So, yeah, this is just kind of a quick snapshot of some of them, but we're really proud to be able to have so many folks who are able to join and then bring quite a few of their team members to learn as they're seeing a larger deployment of drones and robots in their overall projects and operations.
Yeah, so we talked about construction early on, and we threw around this term energy, right? But there are specific industries that you serve. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into that because, Sean, people ask me all the time, well, what does EDRC do? Like, who are the communities? Are there, power lines? Is that part of the community? And so I think we have a good visual image to pop up here. If you could talk us through this a little bit.
Absolutely. So what we tried to do is just put together here a quick set of icons that represent what we call the energy value chain. So when people say energy, I think immediately pops in their mind either usually oil and gas, like you say, or power utilities, right? So
Right.
that's what your vision of energy is. And it's, all the above. It is power lines, it is power generation, fossil, nuclear, renewables, solar, and wind. It is all forms of oil and gas, meaning oil and gas from the time it's produced onshore and offshore at rigs through the pipelines and storage and midstream, all the way into the downstream, refining, petrochemical, and then eventually shipping, maritime, the movement of both oil and gas and refined products. So you have this massive energy, I call it the energy industrial complex or energy value chain, that basically is all the different areas under energy that we serve with the Energy Drone Robotics Coalition.
Well, and not only that, Sean, but then there's like, let's just call it the larger ecosystem, right? You kind of build out this chain of all the different stakeholders along the way for any given kind of energy related function. But then there's those kind of secondary issues like, methane compliance. And, the fact that these companies, they have to watch this because they have regulatory requirements. And so therefore, how are drones helping in that arena, right? So I mean, I feel like this over the years has grown significantly. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, Don, as the initial, I think we still serve today inspection, survey, and mapping, right? But
Yep,
as the
yep.
use cases have proliferated,
Yes.
that's where and the opportunities for drones and robotics to be deployed, that's really helped us, I think, expand the marketplace and the ability of our energy asset owners, service companies, and solution providers, all the
Yes.
key stakeholders involved. So whether it's back to the early days around engineering construction with new development projects or methane and emissions monitoring, you certainly see quite a bit going on there. We even have an emerging working group around industrial drone delivery and autonomous cargo. So something that's, everybody thinks of the retail and medical, which are much further along, but there's a lot to be said of using drones at heavy lift and or autonomous surface vehicles to be able to take things ship to shore, ship to ship, ship to rig, or from one side of an oil field like as large as the Permian Basin to another. So there's a whole lot of areas like that that are continuing to evolve, and we're excited to cover those both in the coalition and at the annual summit.
Yeah. So, and Sean, I think someday we're going to see that subsurface vehicle that pops up to the surface, maybe swims for a little bit, and then jets out of the water and flies. Right? We're not quite there yet. Although I did see one company in Amsterdam called Speeder Systems that has a really cool kind of almost like hovercraft that also flies, and it's made for the maritime environment. So really cool things happening. I think this is going to keep getting bigger and bigger and blowing up. But speaking of getting bigger and bigger, blowing up, that's your summit, right? So you started with maybe like 100 people or something, as you said, a handful of vendors, and now you're at your 8th year. So Tell us about your EDRC Summit, which is every year in Houston, Texas.
Absolutely. So we're looking at this year, probably about 100 companies will be exhibiting and showcasing all different types of hardware, software solutions. And so that's exciting. And then on top of that, we're going to have probably a little over 1,500 people will be there from these hundreds of energy companies and the service companies who basically are the ones who have these assets that need inspection, surveying, and mapping, and the companies who do the work for them. So it's a really great gathering of folks who are involved in the industry within energy and drones and robotics. And we like to say from the stars to the seafloor. So we have everything from satellites to drones to crawlers and obviously ground-based robotics to surface vehicles and marine, which where we're going subsea. So we utilize robots, and there's use cases and tracks and co-located events covering all of that.
Yeah, I've gone, as you know, Sean, I've gone for the last couple years. I keep coming back because every year it's something new. It's interesting. I learn things. I meet new companies, and you're absolutely right. You're one of the few shows, honestly, where people working in space are coming to that. I just had a space panel, space inspector for my Law Tech Connect workshop because people don't appreciate how much happens in space. And it was actually a company that was doing methane compliance from space. It was part of their methane workshop. Yeah,
satellites are a big piece of it. I mean, when you look at energy companies unpacking how they're going to be tackling these new regulatory requirements and their desire to reduce, so they've joined these, organizations like OGMP to reduce methane voluntarily. So you look at it, and definitely satellites is one of the first steps. They're able to see some of the largest issues with satellites, and then drones being another level, and then actually ground robotics being probably the closest to being able to really pinpoint exactly where the leak is and be able to mitigate that. So yeah, it's a multi-tiered approach with multiple types of autonomous vehicles being involved to help them to successfully be able to put together a methane program.
Now, this event, as the slide said before, is Monday, June 10th through Wednesday, June 12th this year in Houston. So you have an expo hall so explain to people how they can kind of engage with this summit. There's an expo hall pass, there's like a full conference pass, and then there's these like workshops and tracks. So how does all that work if I'm new to EDRC and I'm thinking of coming to Houston, what am I looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. So we try to keep it pretty simple. And even though there are, like say, it's not a 3-ring circus, it's more like a 10-ring circus. But at the end of the day, there's a lot to unpack there. But the reality is you have to think about what is it you really are looking to do. So if it's like, hey, I'm coming to network, I want to see the new tech, and I'm going to have the capabilities of being part of that demo zone, right? Go in and check out drones and robots actually going through the paces, and I want to be able to hear some of the most recent tech updates and use cases. That's an expo pass. You get an expo pass, and all of that's going to be included in that type of opportunity,
including your bots and brews, right? Your bots and brews.
Absolutely. The receptions are definitely involved.
Yeah.
Tuesday is bots and brews,
yeah.
And so that's our big reception on Tuesday night on the 11th, and it's a lot of fun. We do those quarterly, and obviously it makes sense for us to put it with the event this year. And we have some co-located groups coming with us, the Petroleum User Group, which is a GIS-based organization, and ERISA, our Urban Regional Information Systems, is also going to be there. So it's exciting to have these groups come for Bots and Brews that night. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And that's included with everybody's passes, including those who do Expo passes. So that's like kind of your easy entry point, Expo Pass. And then from there, you take a look at either a 1-day or a 3-day conference pass, which includes all those benefits from the Expo side, but then allows you to really get into the keynotes, the breakouts, the workshops. It allows you to go to all the other content that may be a little bit more applicable to where you are with your program. So then you're not just seeing the tech and the demos, you're hearing some of the best practices. You're seeing energy companies unpack how they're built their programs, where their programs are today, and where they're headed tomorrow. And you're getting a lot more specific information in those conference sessions, either with a 1 day or a 3 day pass. So that's really kind of the two different ways I'd say it's expo or conference. Either one's going to give you a ton of information, a really, opportunity to network, which I think is what a lot of people talk about. It's
Yeah.
interesting. I was doing some calls with some of our utility asset owners, and we were talking about the upcoming panel. We have a utility asset owner roundtable that we do, and a couple of them were talking about how they met for the very first time at Energy Drone Robotics Coalition, attending the event, several years ago, and now they have benchmarking programs they do together. They do joint exercises together. So it's exciting to see those kind of relationships that were developed a few years ago go to the next level. So we hope a lot of people get involved this year so that they can start those relationships for themselves.
No, I love that, and that's what education is all about too. Is and giving people knowledge, but also in an ideal setting, bringing them together. I think we really missed that during those horrible COVID days. And now that we have live events, we're back full steam. It just makes such a difference, and I think that's a perfect example. But speaking of education, when people ask me, where do you go to get your news about the industry? I've got a handful of different newsletters that I personally subscribe to. And one of the earliest ones I subscribed to, Sean, frankly, was yours. Before I even met you, I had subscribed to your newsletter. And tell everybody a little bit about that, because I'm a super fan of this newsletter.
Well, thank you very much, Don. I appreciate it. And the newsletter is definitely one of our biggest channels. It comes out every Tuesday morning. So in 1 week, in 5 minutes of your time, as a reader, you basically are able to see a quick synopsis of what are the projects, what tech, what's happening. And we unpack at least usually one big story each week. So you really get kind of a quick round robin. And the biggest difference is there's some excellent newsletters, like you said, out there that cover the drone and robotics industries in their own way, from the investment side, from the public policy side and regulatory, or just the ecosystem. And
Yeah.
those are all wonderful. But for us, it's anyone who's really interested in energy and drones and robotics. And this is a way for you to unpack that very quickly on a weekly basis. And we do it a little tongue in cheek. Our editors are pretty clever. And so we try to make it fun for people as well, as obviously it is a serious business newsletter, but I think with a little bit more of a casual side as well.
Yeah, I mean, just like some of your other titles, Petro Metro and Bots and Brews. I want to revisit the Bots and Brews because just in case people miss that you do these above and beyond your summit. You do it in conjunction with your summit just because it makes sense. So explain the Bots and Brews concept and how it's evolved and how people can get involved in that.
Sure. So basically, the concept really just came from people love the annual summit, right? Who doesn't love one of the largest gatherings in the world of energy, drones, robotics, and all the key stakeholders? So that people love that, but it's once a year. They're very difficult to do, and people don't have time for us to be able to do multiple. But there became really, I'd say, a large call from our audience to not just be able to get things like news and social and online events. They wanted to get together. They wanted to meet up. And so that's really where Bots and Brews came about. And we started that several years ago in one of the local craft breweries, St. Arnold's, and basically said, hey, what if we did a quick rundown of very recent use cases? So energy companies, service companies could talk about what they've done literally in the last 2-3 months, not waiting for a whole year's worth of information. And then why don't we have tabletops where several companies can showcase, hey, here's our new tech. And so that's really where Bots and Brews came about. And similarly, it was a few dozen people at the first one. Now it's several hundred who come together. And so we have to organize it a little bit further in advance. But that's really where the Bots and Brews concept came about, was just audience demand, to get together. And now we're starting to see a lot more folks who would like us to come to other towns, come out of Houston. So we're really looking forward to the ability to try to get to places like Denver, which I know you're a fan of, and there's a lot going on up there, and obviously, UAVs, autonomous
Mining,
systems,
mining.
mining, oil and gas. You have quite a bit that's going on in Colorado, and then the other one obviously would be Calgary. So we're taking a look to see what we can do that would make sense to getting bots and brews in those locations as well.
Well, you better be calling me when you're organizing the Denver one, because I absolutely want to go to that and help get involved. So that would be super fun. Yeah, we had Expo was here last year, and just so great to have everybody kind of in your hometown. And I know you feel that way too, because you live in Houston, Sean, and your event is there, and you can tell that you just love it, and you have such a sense of community there. So
Sure.
I'm going to ask you a little bit, kind of backing up. You're under this umbrella of Innovate Energy. What is that? What is Innovate Energy, and what does Innovate Energy do?
Mhm. So if you think about it, InnovateEnergy is really all about where energy and emerging tech come together. So there's multiple different ways that they utilize tech in the energy market. Drones, robotics, and autonomy. That's a really great area and one of our oldest. So that's where the Energy Drone Robotics Coalition came about. But
Right.
then we also have communities that have been built with the same sets of channels and things like that in the immersive community. So, meaning virtual reality, augmented reality, XR, digital twins, reality capture. So, a ton of the areas that technology is impacting energy and that area is being covered. We have another one that was built just for AI. So, all the different ways AI is being deployed. So, where Energy Drone Robotics Coalition might cover AI and robots or AI and drones, there's a lot of other places that AI is being used in the energy industry. That's where our AI group is able to cover that. And we have a couple others that are being built for 2025. So it's an umbrella, if you think about it, of emerging tech communities that are all focused on the industrial energy space and sectors, and helps them to understand the tech, the trends, the use cases, and what's the best ways to grow their programs for all the stakeholders.
Well, that's a great segue, because we had that earlier slide with the stakeholders, if you will, and we have a slide next that showcases some of the tech and service companies that are part of your group and come to your events regularly. So here we go, popping this up. So you can see how this group has grown over time between the stakeholders who are looking to employ the tech, and the tech companies and service companies or other providers that are basically providing that for them. And so that's kind of your very large community here.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see. And unfortunately, I'm looking at this, noticing we're still behind. We have so many folks who are joining that I need to make sure we continue to update it. But what's an interesting trend to watch, I think on this, Don, and you've probably seen it because you've been such a great, contributor and follower to our group over the years, is that, it started with hardware. And that was really a ton of what was going around at the time. And then we started to get a little bit more into the software that people could use for fleet management and logging their flights and making sure that they were staying within the regulatory parameters. And then now we're starting to see this whole growth of making data actionable. So a ton of the companies who are getting involved are really on the software side, but actually focused on just how are they utilizing the data, and how because there's so much of it, that as these programs have grown and the drones and the payloads have become more sophisticated. So there's a whole lot that's going on there. So it's exciting to see the evolution of our solution provider stakeholder group. As the industry has needs, that group keeps evolving to fill their needs.
No, absolutely. And I think, this kind of indicates a level of professionalism that we maybe didn't see in those early years, right? As we add things on like analytics, because I'd just go out on a limb, Sean, and say every show we're seeing these, I'll call them ecosystem companies. Like, all right, now you've got this great hardware, this drone, this amazing sensor. What are you doing with that data, right? And all that. So I think we're going to continue seeing this grow. And clearly, you guys are on the cutting edge of it when it comes to the energy crowd and the industrial crowd. So, all right, we talked about your summit, your Bots and Brews, your newsletter, all the different stakeholders from kind of every possible angle. What did I miss, Sean, that you wanted to cover with regards to the educational activities that you guys are involved in?
Sure. So one of the things that's unique that we're bringing this year for the first time to the summit is our drone operators forum. So this is actually going to be a 3-hour program on the first day, Monday, before the general program begins, where the asset owner, stakeholders are able to bring their leaders together to talk about their programs and where they're headed and how they've built them over time to just their own crowd, I would say. And so this is the first time that we're bringing together just the operators for their own section of programming. And it's been something they've requested, and we're excited to be able to deliver that so that they'll be able to unpack, within their own community. And it's a lot more intimate. It involves a lot more ability to be in small roundtables so that they're able to share as a community, or versus just having speakers up on stage. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of value in that speaker experience that'll be happening the rest of the time. But this will be our first time to bring the drone operators together uniquely for, connecting one-to-one.
Oh, that's awesome. And you do a lot of specialized content. I know we didn't really touch on this, Sean, but you put out reports, not only from your event, post-event, like here's what we gleaned from the event, here's the trends we got from it, but also, throughout the year. So tell us a little about those reports and perhaps your website and how people can access all of those.
Sure. So if people go to edrcoalition.com, that's how the easiest way to find us. And we put out reports on a variety of different, I would say, subsector within energy issues or areas that people want to see more extensive coverage, a deeper dive. So we'll then take information that will be specific to something. Let's just take a BV loss. There's always a lot of questions around, how do I start that program? Where are we today with the waivers and the process? And where are we seeing successes on use cases? What
Right.
projects are actually being enabled by having BV loss? Not just a test case, but where are we able to develop new areas? And so we might take something like that and unpack that as a deep dive report, and then put that up on the website so that people are able to download that and have a chance to be able to reference it. So that's the type of thing that we're able to do on the report at the edrcoalition.com. And then we also do an annual survey where we ask the stakeholders about their programs. What are they flying? What types of robotics are they adding into their aerial programs as far as ground or marine, all the different questions that they have. And so we definitely add those in as well.
Yeah, that's great. And all those are free. Is that right, Sean? In other words, if I'm going on your website, I want to download a report. I might have to fill out a form, but it's coming into my inbox.
Absolutely. So we just ask you to, let us know who you are, and that's it. And then you get the information and you have the ability to access that. And that's the same. We take our sessions after the event, and we're able to put several of those up for people to be able to enjoy from outside the attendees, just the community as well. And we like to say everybody's welcome. We have a big tent theory. So the more the merrier. We like to try to get information for education and to help people, who don't necessarily, have time to be attending a live event. There's still ways for them to be able to be connected and learn best practices.
And speaking of which, you're so connected, Sean. You don't just stick with your own crowd. You venture out. I saw you at Exponential running around San Diego. So it's great to see you in person. So let me ask you this, going off script for a second, but you and I talk about this stuff all the time. As you look back the last couple of months, or the last maybe handful of shows you've gone to, what trends have you seen relevant to your lane, your energy sector, that you're seeing pop up elsewhere, that's kind of, just kind of validating what you're seeing on your side of the fence?
Yeah, there's been a few things that have been very interesting. So if we kind of go back to a couple of things we just were talking about recently, BV loss and waivers, right? We're seeing more and more waivers that are occurring at a faster pace for further flights, So that I think is something that's a trend that's affecting all sectors and is very much relevant. And we're right in the mix with energy and critical infrastructure being an early adopter of waivers with the FAA and showcasing that they can fly safely and be able to expand, the envelope and really, I think give a lot of data back to the industry and the FAA, which is a loop, right? Which hopefully
Yes.
create more waivers
The
or more.
virtuous circle, if you will.
Right. Yes. So I think that trend is very positive for all of us until some of the further regulatory enablements are made for, potentially, 108 or whatever it is going to be called in the next evolution. So I think that's very important. The other one that I saw unpacked quite a bit in San Diego that I thought was interesting, and we've seen in a few other spots, is around AAM, right? So we're all sharing the same airspace, not only all the different sectors who are flying autonomous or, uncrewed vehicles, but we're sharing it with the folks, who've always been there, helicopters, planes, etc. So that airspace needs to be managed in a safe way, but there needs to be growth to allow that. And there needs to be technology adopted. And I think that's a huge project that's happening on multiple levels around urban environments and others around UAM, AAM. That I think obviously impacts us all.
Yeah,
And
and frankly, Sean, not too far from your backyard in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, NASA and the FAA are talking bigly about this key site and some real-world operations that they expect to really go off in earnest in August of this year. So we'll keep our eyes peeled on Texas for sure. Everything's bigger and better there, right?
well,
So
certainly it's bigger. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Outside of Alaska,
yeah, that's true. That's
so
true.
we got some space, so it's a great. And that North Texas corridor, I think, is doing some very interesting things, as they are in some other areas like New York with New Air or Vantas up in North Dakota. It's just exciting to see where people are kind of pushing the envelope, as I said, to build and grow the industry, and that comes back to us. And the last one I was going to mention is just around that drone delivery. I'm seeing a lot more happen there. And I think we're starting to see a focus now potentially on the middle mile, which is where we live. Our thoughts are that's where the gains are going to be versus last mile, which has been explored, I think, at a much greater level and is still continuing to grow. So I think that's an area that we're seeing that also comes back towards us in the technology, lessons learned, etc. So yeah, so I'd say those are kind of the big three off the top of my head that I've seen more globally that are also very relevant to our community as well.
Absolutely. And, not all deliveries are the same. I totally agree with you. That distinction between last mile, middle mile, the larger aircraft, the longer distances, that's clearly the next phase, right? Whether it's going to be hydrogen, which I saw quite a bit of in Amsterdam, surprisingly, because batteries aren't going to cut it if you're going far. And so it's going to be interesting times to see the technology continue to evolve with these larger aircraft and these longer distances in the energy sector and others, to be sure. So, Sean, we're getting close to the end of our time together, and we're here. It's May. We're about 30 days or so out from your big event. And then you've got the rest of the year. As you look forward to the rest of 2024, what do you hope to see?
Yeah, so as far as for the industry, we certainly hope to continue to see growth in the regulatory schemes in the U.S. so that we're able to move forward. But as far as the organization, we see the ability to continue to serve our folks in all the channels that we've discussed, as well as building out new channels for people. So making it a little bit more easy for people to find each other is really kind of one of the key enablements that we're looking at, some different opportunities to do that through community. So whether that's online communities, market maps, different ways for people to be able to understand what's actually happening in the energy sector around drones and robotics and autonomous, and how do we, help people find each other and connect with each other. And so we're going to be unpacking several new projects in those areas. So I'd say stay tuned, because we're finding new ways that we're going to be able to help people connect and find great information beyond the channels we've developed so far.
Well, make sure you let me know, and I'll push that out through my network. So when you're doing something like that, Sean, and you and I have talked, Exponential is going to be in your backyard next year in Houston, and I'm super excited to get you involved in Law Tech Connect next year. I've already, started thinking about that event and absolutely having an energy panel, energy focused panel, laws, policies, tech. That is all, you are all over that. So we'll continue those conversations, and really looking forward to collaborating on that and other things as the years come. But as we kind of wrap up, how do people reach you?
Yeah, so it's really easy, and I'm looking forward to it as well, Don. I absolutely love working with you in Law Tech Connect, and all the different ways that you've been a great subject matter expert helping us to understand what's going on in the industry and help that work into the energy. So looking forward to doing that again with you next year as well, with the focus on Houston. But the best way to connect with us with community is edrcoalition.com. Go online, and that's got links to all these channels I'm describing, whether it's our newsletter or the resources section or the summit or the Bots and Brews meetups. So that gives you all the intel. And then certainly, as far as me personally, LinkedIn is where I live most of the time. So find me Sean Guerre at LinkedIn, and you basically are be able to connect with me, and look forward to talking with anyone. And reach out if you ever need anything around the energy and autonomy or UAVs or robotics. Happy to help.
Awesome. I'm going to a little flurry of counter UAS type events towards the end of May, Sean, but yours really is the next big one on tap, and I'm really looking forward to moderating a panel that you're going to tell me about, and going and Bots and Brews and seeing everybody again. It's always a homecoming for me when I go to Houston for EDRC. So very much looking forward to that. But in our let's say 2 minutes that we have remaining, Sean, I'd like to cede the floor to you to make any concluding remarks or final comments to our audience.
Sure. So one of the biggest things I always forget to add to conversations with people, we're super excited to see you as well, as we are everyone else. And people need to understand, a lot of people feel like because of our name, Energy Drone Robotics Coalition, like we're a closed membership society or something. And that's absolutely not the case. We are wide open for anyone to be able to, whether it's our online resources or the news or our summit, it's open to everyone. It's open to the entire industry. And so I think that's one of the most important things to unpack, because I continue to still get questions from people who are like, oh, I wish I could attend your summit. And I find out that they don't mean their time or conflict. They feel like they're not allowed to. And I just wanted to make sure people understand, we're, like I said, Big Ten. We like to work with as many people as possible. So please get involved with us if you have a chance. And we look forward to working with everybody in the industry to grow, educate, and move forward.
And just 2 seconds, you're talking about education beyond the industry. You bring students to your event, and I love that you do that. So folks, when you think about EDRC and the education they're putting out, it's for everybody, and it's not just for industry and all the stakeholders we talked about, but even the folks that haven't quite entered the industry yet, the folks that are thinking about, they're just learning. So that's what this education theme was all about. That's why, Sean, I think it's perfect that you selected that theme for your show, and super grateful. Great to have you, and thanks again. Can't wait to see you soon.
Excited to see you as well, Don. Thanks so much for the opportunity, and love working with Don of Autonomy. Take care, everybody.
Out here.